Hello and welcome to Represent NYC on the Manhattan Neighborhood Network. Thanks for joining us. I'm New York State Comptroller Tom DiNapoli. As State Comptroller, I serve as New York State's chief fiscal watchdog because New York City is such an important part of our state and an important part of our state's economy. My office keeps a close eye on what's happening in the 5 boroughs. Today I'll be discussing topics that affect the city with 2 people who have deep roots here. We'll start off with one of Manhattan's newest council members. New York City Council member Keith Powers was elected last November and took office this January representing District 4 on the east side of Manhattan. Keith, congratulations on your election and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
You're filling the shoes of a very well-known and well-regarded council member, Dan Garodnick.
I am.
And you certainly bring to the position great experience working in government, working in the community, lifelong New Yorker, third generation.
Third generation, Peter Cooper, yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So just give us a sense now that you're settling into the position, what are your priorities as you start off your term?
First of all, thank you for having me, and it's great to be here with somebody who I admire so much as a public servant, and also, as you know, to follow in the steps of Dan Garodnick, who's been for the last 12 years a great advocate for the city and my community. So I kind of picking up where Dan leaves off, a few priorities that I see, just like he saw, as essential to my community. One is the ongoing cost of living in New York City, particularly around housing and protecting and creating new affordable housing in the city, ensuring that small businesses, particularly my district, they need a lifeline, they need a way up, they need to know that they have a future here in the city. So Dan did some work around retail vacancies and protecting small businesses, so I feel like this is going to be a continued ongoing issue. Homelessness and the addressing both intergenerational poverty in the city and giving people comfort that that the city has a real plan for moving forward on homelessness. So we hear it every day. Yeah. And then finally, it's hard not to talk about congestion and traffic and the MTA at this particular moment. So in my district, we have big priorities like the 2nd Avenue subway we want to see funded. We are the most congested part of this probably state, and we have the L train shutting down as well. So we have a few big priorities around transportation in the district.
Obviously, the state has a big role to play there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we know from the proposals the governor's initially laid out that details will be forthcoming, but some version of what has been labeled congestion pricing will probably be on the table. Do you have a sense that compared to when the Bloomberg administration advanced a proposal that there's a greater likelihood that some version of that might be embraced, or in fact the opponents, particularly from the outer boroughs, will prevail instead, and there'll have to be some other alternative? And the mayor, of course, has put on the table doing a millionaire's tax as a way to fund the MTA.
I was chief of staff for an assembly member, one of your former colleagues, Jonathan Bing, at the time, around the time when the first proposal came forward, and I think that and then looking at it now as a council member, I do recognize that there's a difference. One is just that time sometimes makes it easier to do policies as people get better acquainted with what the policy might look like and how it would impact them. I recall back in 2008, I think it was, when he put his proposal forward, that we were looking at the dividing line of 60th Street at the initial proposal, and people were literally talking about making a turn out of their garage and ending up in the zone and then having to pay. So there's a lot of logistics that go into this. So I think time will be helpful and supportive to the plan, and I think that we've spent more time in those last years putting together a proposal. I think the Move New York plan and other plans have spent time actually working with the stakeholders to build a plan that addresses. So Staten Island, for instance, would have lower fees on the Verrazano Bridge, lower tolls. So you see some support coming out of places like that. But ultimately, I fear, but others I believe that it will be a tough political fight to get it passed because of the sort of dynamics of in the city versus out of the city. Yeah. So I do think there is an uphill battle on that.
It's another example of how the city's fate is very much tied to decisions that are being made in Albany. Absolutely. Sometimes that balance of power is not always fully understood or appreciated, but it is a reality.
It's an absolute reality.
Yeah. You know, you start off on the housing issue, and I know that's been a big cause and big concern. You're very involved with the movement to keep Stuytown and keep it affordable. It is an ongoing challenge. When we do our reports, we like to brag about the great success of New York City, the strong economy, and people want to live here. and not just in Manhattan, but
true.
you know,
Yeah,
outer boroughs are hot and popular
Yeah.
as well. It's the place to be. How tough, though, to balance a demanding market and pressure that puts on price, and still have the kind of diverse city that you want to have, and have people who are going to live here and provide the services.
Right.
You can't just have wealthy people or foreigners that have a second home here. How do we do a better job of striking that balance?
There's great question, and something that's you note is near and dear to my heart. So there's in my neighborhood in Stuyvesant, Tempe to Cooper, it was laws that changed, throughout time in Albany, and I think the city had some role in that as well, that changed the way that the relationship between the tenant and the landlord in some cases. So we talk about the rent regulation laws. So to me, one of the easiest fixes, although not so easy politically, is to really strengthen the rent regulation laws in Albany. We know that's a tough fight because it's been a tough fight for decades, but that's really where the heart and soul of it lies. In the city, I think the city has tried to step up and play a role where it can. So even just last year, the city council passed a bill to allow for low-income New Yorkers to have legal counsel, understanding that is the difference for some cases of staying in your apartment, which might be at a good affordable apartment, or ending up on the streets of New York City. And those types of issues are really the thing that has led to something like those support systems really prevent our homeless population from growing even more and then having to put more money into it. There's an ongoing debate, I think, in this city about whether we should keep building and adding housing in, whether we should be building new types of programs around housing, or we should be doing something different. My approach here is we should be looking at the low and middle income housings. We should be looking at city-owned property as much as we can to be prioritizing housing. We should be looking at strengthening protections in the city where we can, and in the state around rent regulation and around programs. We should be taking advantage of programs like the senior citizen rent increase exemption, adding more money into it so seniors feel like they can stay here. And then what we did in Stuyvesant, Tempe to Cooper is the city made an investment to do preservation there and to make sure that the existing tenants didn't feel ongoing pressure from their landlord to kick them out, and that there was going to continue ongoing affordability there. So from the city's role, some of it's just resources, putting money into some neighborhoods and communities to preserve, and then where we can to build new housing. It's really deep affordability, not just sort of the highest AMIs.
And as I recall, you framed it in the sense of a new vision of Mitchell-Lama, which was set up years ago for middle-class housing.
I love the Mitchell-Lama program. I always have. When I was working for Jonathan Bing, he actually chaired. There was a subcommittee that we chaired on it. I thought it was always a good program. There's an ownership model and there's a rental model. I thought it provided good affordability. It provided good middle-class housing. A lot of it was in Manhattan, near my district, where hotspot communities. So where we do have land in the city, I do want to look at these types of programs that are really for the middle and lower working class New Yorkers. The one challenge of Mitchell-Lama was that it expired, and that was the big challenge of it. So it's going to cost more money to do it if we don't want it to expire. But that type of private-public partnership made sense, and it worked for a long time. Unfortunately, a lot of them expired, so we have to look for ways to do it for the long term. And the Community Service Society, the City Comptroller, and others have come out and supported this plan as well. So I think we can find a path towards it.
Post-election November 2016, people are very concerned about our political system, our political process, getting more people involved, the influence of money, and obviously in New York City, which is different than what we have in the state, unfortunately, for us, is that you have public financing of campaigns, and I think that's a great advantage in terms of leveling a playing field, providing competition, incentivizing small donations, and so on. But I know that you're one that believes we need to do more to open up the process, have more sunlight, more transparency, more accountability. Talk a little bit about your reform agenda in terms of the city's election and political process.
I appreciate that. I think there's two parts of it. One is the financing, and one is the actual operations of it. So I talked about both in my campaign, because after that election, where some people didn't like the results of the election, obviously, but everybody seemingly had a frustrating experience going to vote. Long lines to wait, no early voting. People showed up, they weren't even registered to vote, or they're at the wrong place, or they found out their polling place changed. So that sort of essential part of our process, of the democratic process, voting, should be easy. It should be accessible. It should be something that people feel like they want to take advantage of and not feel like they have to go 4 hours out of their way to do it. And I remember standing at the polling places on Election Day 2016. I actually was at Donald Trump's polling place, by the way, at the time. Yeah, he was my district. And there was 3-hour lines, 2-hour lines to vote. So I definitely want to focus on what the city's role can be in improving the elections process and making it easier to vote. The city council just passed a bill earlier this year, or late last year, to do early voting. To do online registration. So that's a good step. We got to find where the city's authority lies. Obviously, work with those in Albany to make sure that we can open the process. And then here in the city, the Campaign Finance Board. Some people complain about it. I think it's a model agency for running our elections. I was a beneficiary of it. I'm not, like many other candidates are running, somebody who's independently wealthy. I really relied on small donations to help myself get elected and to raise the money. I want to offer that opportunity to everybody. So we want to constantly look at where we can strengthen the process to making sure more people get into it. So whether that is lowering the thresholds for getting in, expanding the amount of money that's available for running, so whether we can offer more matching funds to people, particularly in larger races. I think it's a good model. I think it's a good system. We're going to focus on it, I think, hopefully in the next 4 years of improving that system and finding ways that the city can make voting and the democratic process a lot easier.
So you're starting out in city council, and the year began with a lot of changes. It was quite a competition for Speaker of the City Council, so you were thrown into the middle of that. One of your Manhattan neighbors is now the Speaker, Corey Johnson, great guy. How do you see the council coming together? I don't know that it was a supremely divisive process, but there was a very competitive process.
It was competitive.
And a lot of folks were in there and hoping to come out on top. How do you see the council coming together at this point?
I think a couple observations. One is, as you note, it's a 51-member body, and we vote for speaker amongst the 50 and plus one member. So it's a weird process because you don't go out to the voters. You really sort of talk to your colleagues and feel like
they did have public forums.
They did forums,
which was interesting.
Yeah, it was interesting.
And it was on TV.
I actually went to one of them, so there was one voter in the room at the time. But I think that it's an interesting process because you have to sort of talk about your priorities to the public in these forums, and then also talk to your colleagues about what they want out of the institution, what they want for themselves and their districts. I think we're doing well so far. I think that our new speaker has demonstrated a capacity to sort of put this together, get people on board. Obviously, not everybody's 100% happy, but that's the way these things work. And everybody should walk away feeling like they have an institution that works. They're on the committees they want to be on, and they'll be able to do the work for their community. So a couple observations. For myself, I'm the chair of the Criminal Justice Committee. Rikers Island is going to be a big hot topic.
Big
so
issue.
he's entrusted somebody like me to be able to do an important issue. My colleague Carlina Rivera is overseeing H&H. A lot of the freshman members are getting really important roles, and a lot of the members that were already on committees, whether it's our Transportation Committee, Consumer Affairs, General Welfare, overseeing homelessness, are staying put. So there'll be continuity. So I think that he's empowered the institution in a real way, and he's added a new oversight function, which I think will be of interest to a lot of people to see where that goes and how that develops. But I think he believes in the institution, and he believes that the speaker's role should be empowering the members and leading through them. And I think that's a good way to be as a speaker.
You have a new speaker, you have new personalities there, including yourself.
Yeah.
You have a mayor that's been reelected, but with term limits, he can't run again.
Right.
Will that create a change dynamic in the relationship between the mayor and the council?
I think for sure. I mean, I think that for 40-something members, they got elected with the mayor 4 years ago. It was really a progressive wave. They came in and brought in a speaker as well. Obviously, the Progressive Caucus played a large role in that. And so there was a true moment in the city. Now I think we're 4 years later, members are looking at their own, 40-something members are going to be out for election too, are going to be looking for their own futures. They're going to be looking at what their priorities are. Relationships change in the meantime. We have a new speaker, some are new committees. I think it's for certain it's going to change. We're not sure how much yet, but I think that with certain big ticket issues, I think you're going to see the council exert some independence. But we'd be foolish to look at the relationship on the other side of City Hall and not believe it's important to us. The city agencies that we work with, the mayor himself, the mayor's staff, those are important to our communities because they have we have a lot of work to do with them. So I don't think it's going to be a wildfire. I think it's going to be a process where we want to show that the council's an independent body. At the same time, understand that it's a relationship where we work together.
We're out of time. We'll have to have you come back again. We wish you well, Councilman.
Thanks so much.
It's great to spend time with you.
Thank you.
Keith, thank you for joining us, Councilman Powers. And to the residents of the East Side, I think you made an excellent choice in your City Council representative. We're going to take a short break and then continue discussing New York issues with my next guest. So we will be right back. Welcome back to Represent NYC. I'm New York State Comptroller Tom DiNapoli. My next guest, Professor Doug Muzzio, is widely known as an expert on New York politics and New York government. He's an invaluable resource and a source of insight and inspiration for members of the press and for his students at Baruch College. Doug, thank you for being here. You are a New York treasure, and we've switched roles. For years, I was on your side.
I don't know. I have to ask you questions, so be prepared. That's my pleasure.
First, I want to ask you about, we talk so much about higher education, the importance of it, the expense of it, making sure there's more access. CUNY is such an incredible resource. Access, number one, quality equal to access. Give us a quick update. How do you feel, your long association with CUNY, how important is it to our city and state today?
It's literally vital to the life of the city and derivatively of the state. I mean, we have 24 campuses. They enroll 500,000 plus students of all, gender, class, race, ethnicity, and it is just incredible. And they are institutions that not only deal with the 550,000 students, but they are anchors of their community. For example, Manhattan Community College is an anchor for activities, art, leisure, entertainment, sports. So they are cultural facilities and have exhibits and speakers, and it's the life of the city is there. And then the nature of our students who are, often first generation. I memean, me. That's why I've stayed in CUNY for 37 years. I've had opportunities to move, but it's wonderful. You see the newest immigrants in your classroom almost as soon as they've arrived. So it has tremendous, and it's educationally, it's one of the finest institutions in the country. I mean, my home institution, Baruch College, is ranked among the best colleges in the country. The business school, we regularly beat Caltech and Carnegie Mellon and Berkeley. It is very highly regarded. The School of International Affairs is wonderful at Baruch. So Baruch is only one example. There are others of the system. So, and our students stay. 85% of CUNY graduates stay in the city. And I've had in my classes, I've had deputy mayors, mayoral candidates, agency heads, agency mid-level management, nonprofits, and I'm going to work forever. I learn from my students.
Good. Well, you talk about diversity and immigration, hot topics at the national level. Here in New York, though, we are still fighting, and I'm supportive of this, to enact the DREAM Act in the state to provide financial assistance to all students, including the children of undocumented families. When you speak to those students, what sense do you get? Are they fearful with what's going on now in this country?
They're able to have the whole range of emotions.
Yeah.
They are fearful. Some of them legitimately because of their status. They are hardworking, and they are worried about getting a job. They're worried about housing. They're worried about getting to work on a subway system that operates. They're worried about paying for school, even though it is an immense bargain. An immense bargain. Yeah. And the quality plus the price has increased demand on the institution, so the institution's feeling a lot of pressure. And the standards are going up. It's incredible.
Yeah. I know years ago people said, well, I'll go to CUNY because the access is there. People didn't talk about quality. Now, you go to CUNY for quality.
Yep.
And it's
Yep.
great that it's a bargain
Yep.
as well.
Yep.
It's great
Yep.
as a bargain as well.
Yep.
Now, for so many years, you had your wonderful TV show, Emmy-nominated show.
Oh.
You don't have that anymore. We miss that, but I still see your comments in the newspapers. I hear you on the radio. Since November 2016, Doug, everything's upside down. Everything that we all thought we understood about politics, at least speaking for myself, makes no sense. So here we are in the beginning of 2018. Where is this all going?
We're down the rabbit hole. This is Alice in Wonderland. I mean, I feel like I've been, smoking a hookah with the caterpillar.
Yeah.
It is so unpredictable and chaotic, though predictable. It is sad. Institutionally, as a political scientist, I look at it, and he is assaulting all the major underpinnings of American society. A relatively unified culture, a judicial system, the media, the bureaucracy. It's emasculated, it's depopulated. I mean, a lot of people are moving out. We are in, and we have foreign policy crises. We are in parlous time, the most parlous times, except for October of 1962, when we thought we were going to be incinerated. This is worse than Vietnam was.
And for us, speaking very locally about it, New York is definitely in the crosshairs. The federal tax reform, the health care changes, the budget cuts, you go down the long list. We're really going to be set back. We're already sending, we did a report, updated that Moynihan report. We get 91 cents back for every dollar we sent a few years ago. Now it's down to 84 cents. It's before all the Trump actions are taking place.
I know. We're a net exporter of capital.
Yeah.
It's like they have the imperial government in Washington, and we're a colony.
Yeah. But what will this translate to? And you look at the polls more than me. You do polls. It doesn't seem to me that his base, minority though it is, has really shifted. They're still there.
No.
And what will happen to those that are outraged? Will they sit on the sidelines? Will the opposition, the Democratic Party, stay divided and not unified? Can the House flip this year? Can the Senate flip this year?
Yeah, sure. Ask me the easy questions. I mean, it is conceivable that the Senate and the House flip. It is not likely that either of the two will flip. And I think that, in fact, the Senate could, depending on candidates and local issues, I mean, it could increase the margin of Republicans from the current 50.
Wow.
Well, I mean, there are more Democratic seats up. There are more Democratic seats that were won by Trump in conservative, either southern or mountain states. Yeah. So it's problematic. And to win 25 or 26 House seats is not impossible. It's happened in my lifetime in the post-Watergate election. I don't know. I'm not sanguine because I don't see the Democratic Party and a leadership emerging that it gives the Democrats coherent direction and on the national phase of the campaign. And then you need quality candidates. Now you've got an influx of women candidates. You've got an influx of young candidates. There are positive signs out there that might negate any kind of speculation at this point. But it's January already.
Yeah. And look how polarizing it is becoming. We talk a lot about California, New York, Jersey, Connecticut. Those are states already that have mostly Democrats in the House. I don't think Connecticut has any Republican House member anymore.
No.
Jersey might have one or two. California's got some. So if those seats are probably the most vulnerable, if they lose some of those Republican seats,
they got to gain New York seats.
Yeah.
I mean, New York, California. They are the major targets, and Jersey too.
What's happening to our politics? Are we going to have states just becoming so completely blue and completely red? And how do you have a national consensus again if we become that divided?
You don't have
Yeah.
a national consensus, and it looks like the national consensus that we thought we had was only partial. I mean, you look at the 35 or the 30 to 35% of the Trump voters, you know, how do you talk with them? I mean, it may sound, you know, Eastern liberal elite bias, but
Yeah.
Joe Arpaio running for the Senate
right.
In Arizona?
On the other hand, we won the Alabama Senate seat. The Democrats did. Who would have thought that? I didn't see that in your predictions.
I didn't make any predictions.
Let me ask you.
I would not have predicted.
Yeah, I wouldn't have predicted that. We just have a few minutes left. You know, New York seems to be getting a lot of attention in terms of possible springboard for a national candidacy. Bernie Sanders swore in Mayor de Blasio, and he's been to Iowa. Andrew Cuomo's name is mentioned a great deal. Kirsten Gillibrand getting a great deal of national attention. Is it viable for a New Yorker to be considered on the national ticket?
Oh, of course, it's viable that he be considered on a national ticket. He or she be considered. I mean, Rudy Giuliani, for example.
Sure. John Lindsay tried years ago.
John
remember?
Lindsay,
Right? Yeah.
and then Hillary Clinton,
Yep.
quote unquote,
Yep.
tried to also.
It is a concern, and I think, you know, when I travel around, and you see this all the time at school, young people are, I find they are either incredibly engaged in what's going on or incredibly turned
Yep.
off. No middle ground.
Yep.
And if we lose that vitality of that youthful interest and motivation, I really fear for where we're headed.
I'm fearful of where we're headed to, you know, whether the young people are active or not.
Yeah.
But you have this divide. You've always had the divide between the engaged and a much larger number of the disengaged because they're worried about, you know, transportation and jobs and everything else in their schoolwork.
Yeah.
So you always had that divide, but I don't know, I get mixed messages. I taught an executive MPA course at the school last semester, and I had 22 students, and 20 of them were engaged in some sense or another. And not necessarily in direct political action, but what I would call social good.
Work, yeah. And it's hard sometimes to get their opinions. You know, you do surveys, but it's not like the old days where everybody was home to answer their phone. Between answer machines, cell phones, I don't know how the polling companies get those cell phones, and those are the younger people, so getting their input is hard.
You know, the methodologies and the techniques are being enhanced. We get about 50% of our sample from cell phones.
Oh, you
now.
do? Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
No, you have to. I mean, for the very reasons that you suggest. I mean, if you are not doing cell phones, you're losing, you know, you're 18 to, you know, 35, 40s.
Easy. Well, we're just about out of time. I'm going to have you come back. I didn't let you ask me any questions.
Wait a
I got
minute,
away with
wait
it.
a minute. Wait a minute.
Doug Muzzio, you are, as I said, a New York treasure.
Thank you.
Stay well, keep commentating, and letting us know what's going on out there, my friend. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
We've run out of time. It's been a pleasure talking with you, Doug, and I want to thank Councilmember Keith Powers as well for being our guest and sharing his views. Hopefully, we provided you with an informed and useful conversation on issues that affect New Yorkers. I'm New York State Comptroller Tom DiNapoli. Thank you for watching Represent NYC on Manhattan Neighborhood Network. Goodbye.